Loving someone with an avoidant attachment style. The step-by-step path from dismissive distance to secure connection, deeper trust, and a relationship that thrives, by Daphne Reyes. Introduction. The infant and young child should experience a warm, intimate, and continuous relationship with his mother. In 1944, a man named John Bowlby sat in a quiet room in London, surrounded by the files of 44 young thieves. To the rest of the world, these boys were just troublemakers. They were seen as cold, heartless, and affectionless. People thought they were simply born bad. But Bowlby saw something else. As he turned the pages of their lives, he noticed a pattern that would change how we understand love forever. Almost all of these cold children had one thing in common. They had been separated from their mothers or caregivers for a long time when they were very small. Bowlby realized that these children weren't born without a heart. Instead, they had learned to turn their hearts off. They had learned that reaching out for love was dangerous or disappointing. To survive the pain of being alone, they built a wall. They decided deep in their minds that they didn't need anyone. This was the birth of what we now call avoidant attachment. It wasn't a choice to be mean. It was a way to stay safe in a world that felt cold. Today, you might not be dealing with a juvenile thief, but you are likely dealing with the same invisible wall. You are here because the person you love most in the world sometimes feels like a total stranger. You are here because you have tried everything to get close to them, but the harder you pull, the faster they run. The hollow ache of the push-pull. It usually starts with a feeling in your chest, a hollow, heavy ache. You might be sitting right next to your partner on the couch, but it feels like there are miles of empty space between you. You want to talk about your day, or your fears, or even just what you want for dinner. But you find yourself pausing. You are checking their face for signs of the look. You know the one. It's the look that says they are tired, or bored, or feeling crowded. This is the push-pull cycle, and it is exhausting. You seek closeness because that is what humans are wired to do. You want to feel safe and seen. But to your partner, that closeness feels like a threat. When you move toward them, they feel like they are running out of air. They withdraw. They go into the other room. They pick up their phone. They get busy with work. When they pull away, you feel a spike of panic. You might try to explain your feelings more clearly. You might send a long text message. You might cry or get angry. In the world of psychology, this is called protest behavior. You are protesting the loss of connection. But to your avoidant partner, your protest feels like an attack. It adds another brick to their invisible wall. You end up walking on eggshells, constantly overanalyzing every silence and every short text. You worry that if you could just be better or quieter, they would finally love you the way you need. You feel lonely in your own relationship, and that is a special kind of pain that is hard to explain to anyone who hasn't lived it. The transformation from pursuer to secure anchor. This book is not about fixing your partner. It is not about a magic trick that will turn them into a different person overnight. Instead, it is about changing the weather of your relationship. Right now, you are a pursuer. You are the one chasing, and they are the one running. As long as you are in this role, the cycle will never stop. But there is another way to be. You can become a secure anchor. A secure anchor is someone who knows their own worth. They don't need their partner to be on all the time to feel okay. They understand the mechanics of why their partner shuts down, and they know exactly how to lower the temperature in the room before a fight starts. By the time you finish this journey, you will stop the exhausting cycle of chasing and retreating. Learn how to express your needs without triggering your partner's shame alarm. Build a secure base where your partner feels safe enough to put down their guard. Gain the oxygen mask of emotional independence so you never feel like you are drowning in their silence. Know for certain if your relationship can grow or if you are chasing a ghost. You are going to learn how to lead. You won't lead by being bossy or mothering them. You will lead by being the most stable person in the room. When you change how you respond to their distance, the entire dance changes. Why this works. Everything in these pages is backed by decades of science. We will look at the work of John Bowlby, who showed us that our need for love is as real as our need for food. We will talk about Harry Harlow, a scientist who used monkeys to prove that contact comfort, just the simple act of being held, is more important for the brain than being fed. We are going to look at brain scans that show exactly what happens in an avoidant person's head when things get too emotional. Their brain actually sends a signal to deactivate or shut down. It is a biological survival switch. Once you understand that their distance is about their own fear and not your lack of worth, you gain a superpower. You gain the ability to stay calm when they go cold. Elena and Marcus, a story of two worlds. To see how this works in real life, we need to look at Elena Vance. Elena is 34 years old and works as a marketing manager in Seattle. She is smart, successful, and very good at her job. She is the kind of person who makes lists and gets things done. But at home, she feels like a failure. Elena has been living with her boyfriend, Marcus, for 2 years. Marcus is a talented software engineer. He is kind, he's a hard worker, and in the beginning, he was the most stable man Elena had ever met. He didn't play games. He was just there. But lately, the kitchen island in their beautiful condo has become a place of quiet war. One Tuesday evening, Elena came home buzzing with excitement. She had just landed a huge promotion. She had bought a nice bottle of wine and spent an hour making Marcus's favorite pasta. She imagined they would sit together, toast to her success, and talk about what this meant for their future. Maybe they could finally talk about buying a house. When Marcus walked in, he looked at the candles and the wine. He didn't smile. He looked tired. "Oh hey," he said, his voice flat. "Is there an occasion?" Elena's heart sank. But she tried to keep her voice light. "I got the promotion, Marcus. The one I've been working on for 6 months." "That's great, Elle. Really," Marcus said. He sat down and started eating the pasta quickly. He didn't ask about the details. He didn't ask how she felt. When Elena tried to explain how the meeting went, Marcus started looking at his phone. "Are you even listening?" Elena asked, her voice cracking. Marcus sighed and put the phone down. "I'm listening. I just had a long day, Elena. Do we have to do this right now? You're making this into a whole thing." "A whole thing? I'm celebrating." Elena felt the anxious spike hitting her chest. She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab the phone and throw it. Marcus didn't move to comfort her. He didn't get up to give her a hug. He just stared at his plate. "I can't do this," he muttered. He stood up, took his plate to the sink, and walked into his home office, closing the door behind him. Elena sat at the table alone, the candles flickering in the silence. She felt small. She felt too much. She spent the next 3 hours in the living room, staring at the closed office door, wondering what she had done wrong. She thought about sending him a long text explaining why his silence hurt her. She thought about knocking on the door and demanding he talk to her. Elena was trapped in the invisible wall. She was trying to tear it down with her bare hands, but all she was doing was hurting herself. We are going to follow Elena and Marcus through this book. We will see how Elena learns to stop knocking on that closed door, and how, eventually, Marcus finds the courage to open it on his own. The road ahead. The path from distance to connection isn't a straight line. It is a journey that requires patience, but it also requires a map. Here is how we will get there. We will start by looking deep into the why. We'll go back to the nursery with John Bowlby and the laboratory with Harry Harlow to see why some people see intimacy as a trap. You will learn about the deactivation switch and why your partner's brain thinks silence is safety. Then we will move into your own oxygen mask. You cannot lead a relationship if you are gasping for air. You will learn how to settle your own nervous system so that your partner's distance no longer feels like a life or death emergency. Next, we will look at the dance. We'll see how the hedgehog and the fox interact and how to change your steps to invite your partner closer. You will learn the Golden Bridge technique, a way of communicating that allows an avoidant person to come toward you without feeling like they are admitting defeat or losing their freedom. We will talk about space. This is the part that scares most people, but it is the secret ingredient to intimacy. You will learn how to use space as a tool for connection rather than a weapon of rejection. Finally, we will look at the future. You will learn how to build earned security, a type of love that is even stronger than the kind people are born with, because it was built by hand, through struggle and understanding. A note of hope. If you are reading this, you are likely the pursuer. You are the one doing the heavy lifting. You are the one buying the books and searching for answers. It might feel unfair that you have to be the one to change first. But here is the truth. In every relationship, one person has to be the secure anchor first. One person has to be the one to stop the cycle. Because you are the one seeking knowledge, you are the one with the power. You are not a victim of your partner's silence. You are the architect of a new way of loving. It is possible to have a relationship where you feel safe, It is possible to have a partner who comes to you when they are stressed instead of running away. It won't happen by explaining your feelings one more time. It will happen by changing the very foundation of how you relate to each other. The wall is high, and it has been there for a long time. But walls are not permanent. With the right tools and a steady hand, you can build a gate. The candles on Elena's table have gone out, but the story isn't over. It's just beginning. Chapter 1. Why does my partner push me away? The clock in the kitchen ticked with a heavy, steady sound that felt like a countdown. Elena sat at the island, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea. It was 10:15 p.m. Marcus had been in his home office since 7:30. He hadn't said a word after dinner. He hadn't even looked up when she asked if he wanted to watch a movie. He just gave a quick, "I'm busy," and closed the door. Elena felt like she was standing on a pier, watching a boat slowly drift away into the fog. She wanted to run after it, to shout, to throw a rope. But she knew that if she knocked on that office door right now, Marcus would only pull further away. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was a wall. It was a deadline she couldn't meet. If she didn't find a way to reach him soon, she feared the silence would eventually become permanent. This feeling of being pushed away is a special kind of pain. It feels like a rejection of your very soul. You reach out for love, and your partner reacts as if you are reaching for their throat. To understand why this happens, we have to travel back over 100 years to a cold, quiet house in London. The boy who learned not to cry. In 1911, a 4-year-old boy named John Bowlby lived in a world of strict rules and very little touch. John was born into an upper-class British family. In those days, parents believed that showing too much affection would make a child weak or spoiled. John saw his mother for exactly 1 hour every day during tea time. The rest of his world was managed by a nanny. For John, his nanny Minnie was everything. She was the one who tucked him in, the one who heard his secrets, and the one who provided the only warmth in a very cold house. She was his secure base, though he didn't have a name for it yet. Then, without warning, Minnie was dismissed from her job. To a 4-year-old, this wasn't just a change in staff. It was a tragedy. It was as if his entire world had been torn apart. But in the Bowlby household, you didn't cry, you didn't complain, you carried on. John learned a very dangerous lesson that year. Depending on someone else is a recipe for heartbreak. John grew up and became a psychiatrist. He never forgot the pain of losing Minnie. In 1944, he worked at a clinic for children who had been caught stealing. He noticed a pattern among 44 of these juvenile thieves. Many of them seemed totally affectionless. They didn't seem to care about anyone, and they didn't seem to feel guilt. When John looked into their pasts, he found that nearly all of them had suffered a major loss or separation from their mothers early in life. They had learned to survive by shutting down their hearts. They built a shell so thick that no one could hurt them again. But that shell also kept everyone out. This was the birth of what we now call avoidant attachment, the invisible wall. John Bowlby's childhood gave us the first clue about the invisible wall you see in your relationship today. When your partner pulls away, they aren't usually trying to be mean. They are using a survival tool they built a long time ago. Imagine a child who cries for their parent, but the parent never comes. Or when the parent does come, they are angry, overwhelmed, or cold. That child eventually learns a protest behavior. They scream louder. But if the screaming doesn't work, the brain does something amazing and sad. It flips a switch. It decides, I don't need you anyway. This is called the deactivation switch. In your relationship, this switch flips whenever things get too close or too emotional. To an avoidant person, intimacy feels like a trap. It feels like losing their freedom. When you ask, what are you thinking, or why won't you talk to me, their brain perceives those questions as a threat. The invisible wall goes up instantly. It's a protective shield built in childhood to ensure they never feel that mini-sized hole in their heart ever again. They value self-reliance above everything else because in their mind, self-reliance is the only thing that won't leave me. Elena's office discovery. Elena sat at her desk in the high-rise tech firm where she worked. Outside, the Seattle rain blurred the windows. She had a browser tab open to an article about John Bowlby's life. As she read about his nanny, Minnie, she felt a sudden chill. She thought about Marcus's childhood. He didn't talk about it much, but she knew his father was a military man who valued grit and silence. Marcus once told her a story about falling off his bike and breaking his arm when he was 6. His father hadn't hugged him. He had simply told him to stop leaking from your eyes and walk to the car. Elena leaned back in her chair. For years, she had taken Marcus's distance as a personal insult. She thought he was being lazy, or that he didn't love her enough. She thought if she just explained her feelings better, he would change. But looking at the screen, she realized she was looking at a map of his brain. Marcus wasn't lazy. He was a juvenile thief of a different kind. He was stealing his own emotions to keep them safe. She took a sticky note and wrote, "It's not about me. It's about his survival." She stuck it to the corner of her monitor. For the first time in months, the hollow ache in her chest felt a little lighter. She wasn't angry anymore. She was curious. She was starting to see the wall not as a weapon he used against her, but as a fortress he lived inside of. The science of the shutdown. You might wonder why your partner can't just see how much they are hurting you and stop. To understand this, we have to look at the neurobiology of an avoidant brain. In 2008, researchers did brain scans on people with different attachment styles. They wanted to see what happened when these people were shown pictures of their partners or asked to think about a breakup. For people with an anxious style, the pursuers, the brain lit up like a Christmas tree. Their stress centers went into overdrive. But for the avoidant individuals, something strange happened. On the outside, they looked calm. Their heart rates were lower, and they reported feeling fine. However, the brain scans showed a different story. The parts of their brain that handle emotions were working incredibly hard. They weren't calm. They were actively suppressing their feelings. It takes a massive amount of energy to keep that invisible wall standing. Avoidants have a deactivating strategy. This includes the just tired excuse, claiming physical exhaustion to avoid emotional talk. Focusing on flaws, thinking about a partner's small annoying habits to justify staying distant. The independence myth, believing that needing a partner is a sign of weakness. Secret keeping, not necessarily about big things, but keeping small thoughts or plans to themselves to maintain a sense of mine versus ours. When your partner pushes you away, they are trying to turn down the volume on their own internal stress. They feel suffocated because they don't know how to handle the intensity of connection. To them, closeness equals danger. The independence myth. One of the hardest parts of loving an avoidant is their obsession with being independent. They often say things like, "I just need to do my own thing," or "you're too needy." This is the independence myth. It's the belief that a human being can, and should, be an island. John Bowlby argued against this until the day he died. He believed that humans are biologically wired to need others. We are social animals. We survived on the savannah because we stayed together, not because we wandered off alone. But for someone like Marcus, needing someone feels like a weakness. If he needs Elena, that means Elena has power over him. And if she has power over him, she can hurt him. Just like Minnie hurt John Bowlby by leaving, or just like Marcus's father hurt him by being cold. Hyper-independence is actually a trauma response. It is a way of saying, "I will never let anyone be important enough to break me again." When you understand this, the push feels less like a slap and more like a flinch. Your partner is flinching from the possibility of pain. They are protecting a very small, very scared child who lives deep inside that fortress. Shifting your perspective. If you are the pursuer in this relationship, your natural instinct is to try and tear the wall down. You want to talk, to explain, to cry, and to demand. You think that if you can just make them see your pain, they will change. But remember the 44 juvenile thieves. They didn't start caring because someone yelled at them. They started to heal when they felt safe enough to let their guard down. The first step in your transformation into a secure anchor is to stop taking the distance personally. When your partner retreats to their home office or goes silent, try to see it through the lens of John Bowlby's childhood. See the deactivation switch for what it is, a survival tool. Observe, don't react. When the wall goes up, notice it. Say to yourself, a switch just flipped. Stop the chase. Every time you chase them into their fortress, you give them a reason to lock the door. Validate the need for space. Understand that their air is their independence. Elena realized this at her desk. She saw that her anxious protesting, the crying, the long texts, the late-night talks, was actually making Marcus feel more suffocated. She was accidentally adding bricks to his wall by trying to tear it down. The first step of the anchor. Becoming a secure anchor means you stay steady even when the other person is drifting. It means you don't let their silence dictate your worth. John Bowlby eventually realized that the affectionless children weren't broken. They were just frozen. To melt that ice, you don't use a blowtorch. You use consistent, low-pressure warmth. This isn't about fixing your partner. It's about changing the environment of the relationship. When you stop being a threat to their independence, they no longer need the wall as much. It starts with a simple shift in your own mind. Instead of asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" you start asking, "What are they trying to protect?" When Elena went home that night, she didn't knock on Marcus's office door. She didn't ask him why he was being distant. She simply went into the living room, turned on a show she liked, and breathed. She was putting on her own oxygen mask first. She knew that Marcus was sitting in that room, likely feeling a mix of guilt and relief. By not chasing him, she gave him something he rarely felt: the freedom to come back on his own. The journey from a push-pull cycle to a secure connection is long, but it is built on these small, quiet moments of understanding. You are learning to speak a language your partner was never taught. You are learning that their coldness is actually a very old, very deep fear of being left in the dark. But even if we understand why they push us away, we still have to deal with the biological reality of love. If humans are wired for connection, why does it feel so hard for some of us to give it? Science has shown that the need for touch and closeness is just as vital as the need for food. In fact, a series of famous and heartbreaking experiments with monkeys proved that we would rather be hungry and held than full and alone. But what happens when the person you love seems to prefer being alone? If John Bowlby gave us the why of the avoidant brain, another scientist was about to give us the how of the human heart. And he did it by watching how baby monkeys clung to their mothers. What he discovered would change everything we know about the nature of love. And it's exactly what you need to hear if you feel like you're starving for affection in your own home. Chapter 2: Attachment, the Blueprint of the Human Heart. In the middle of the 1900s, the smartest doctors in the world were sure they had solved the mystery of love. They believed that a baby loved its mother for one reason only: she had the milk. Scientists called this the cupboard theory. They thought human affection was a simple trade. The mother provided the food, and the baby provided the love in exchange for staying alive. Parents were told by experts like John Watson not to hug or kiss their children too much. If you picked up a crying baby, the experts said, you were spoiling them. You were teaching them to be weak and needy. The goal of parenting back then was to create a child who was independent and didn't need anyone. If a child was fed, clean, and worn, the doctors thought their job was done. But in a laboratory at the University of Wisconsin in 1958, a man named Harry Harlow decided to see if the experts were actually wrong. He had been watching infant monkeys in his lab, and he noticed something strange. When the monkeys were taken away from their mothers, they became incredibly attached to the soft gauze pads on the floor of their cages. They would scream and throw fits if the pads were taken away to be cleaned. Harlow realized these monkeys weren't looking for food. They were looking for something soft to hold on to. This observation led to one of the most famous and heartbreaking experiments in the history of psychology. One that would change everything we know about why you feel so lonely when your partner pulls away. The mother of wire and the mother of cloth. To test his theory, Harlow built two fake mothers for his infant monkeys. The first mother was made of hard, cold wire. She had a wooden head and a bottle of milk attached to her chest. She provided the food, but she was sharp and uncomfortable. The second mother was made of soft wood covered in warm, tan terry cloth. She looked much more like a real monkey, but she didn't have any milk. She had nothing to offer but her softness. According to the cupboard theory, the monkeys should have spent all their time with the wire mother, because she was the one keeping them fed. But that isn't what happened. The baby monkeys spent nearly 18 hours a day huddled against the cloth mother. They would only leave her side when they were absolutely starving. They would run over to the wire mother, drink the milk as fast as they could, and then immediately jump back to the soft cloth mother. When Harlow introduced a scary stimulus into the cage, like a mechanical teddy bear beating a drum, the monkeys didn't run to the wire mother with the food. They ran straight to the cloth mother and clung to her until their heart rate slowed down. Once they felt safe in her arms, they were actually brave enough to turn around and look at the scary toy. He proved that the need for touch and closeness is just as vital as the need for food and water. This wasn't a weakness or a want. It was a biological requirement for survival. Without that soft connection, the monkeys grew up terrified, aggressive, and unable to interact with others. The contact comfort framework. When you are in a relationship with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, you often feel like the safe haven. This is where you go when the world feels scary. Just like the monkeys ran to the cloth mother when the drumming bear appeared, humans need a person they can retreat to when they feel stressed or hurt. If your partner is avoidant, they often try to be their own safe haven. They go into their cave to deal with stress alone. This leaves you feeling like your safe haven has locked the door. The secure base. This is the feeling that someone has your back while you go out and do your life. When the monkeys felt the cloth mother's softness, they felt brave enough to explore the cage. In a healthy relationship, knowing your partner is there for you actually makes you more independent, not less. Proximity seeking. This is the fancy term for wanting to be near the person you love. It's not just about sex or deep talks. It's about being in the same room, touching feet on the couch, or hearing their voice. For an avoidant person, proximity can feel like engulfment, like they are being swallowed. For you, it feels like oxygen. The high cost of the cold room. While Harlow was working with monkeys, other researchers were looking at human babies in orphanages. In 1945, a doctor named Renee Spitz studied children who were kept in clean, professional hospitals. They were fed well and had medical care, but the nurses were told not to pick them up or bond with them to avoid spreading germs. The results were horrifying. These babies, despite having all the food and medicine they needed, began to waste away. They stopped growing. They became silent and stared at the walls. Many of them actually died. Spitz called this hospitalism. This happens in adult relationships too. You can have a partner who pays the bills, shares the chores, and never yells, but if there is no contact comfort, the relationship begins to starve. You aren't being dramatic when you feel like the silence in your house is painful. Your brain is literally sounding an alarm because it feels the lack of a secure connection as a threat to its survival. When an avoidant partner withdraws, they are effectively putting the relationship into a cold room. They do this because at some point in their childhood, they learned that reaching out for a cloth mother led to disappointment or pain. They decided it was safer to stay near the wire mother, the world of facts, tasks, and self-reliance, where they couldn't get hurt. Elena's discovery on the couch. Elena sat on the far end of the gray sectional sofa in her Seattle condo. The rain was tapping against the windows, and the only other sound was the clicking of Marcus's mechanical keyboard. He was finishing a report for work, his face glowing in the blue light of the screen. Earlier that week, Elena had read about Harlow's monkeys. She had been trying to get Marcus to be her cloth mother by talking. She would ask him how he felt, or why he was being quiet, or if he still loved her. Every time she did, he would pull away further, his body getting stiff, like the wire mother. She decided to try something different. She didn't ask a question. She didn't bring up the future of their relationship. She simply moved 6 inches closer to him on the couch. She didn't even lean on him. She just let her leg lightly brush against his jeans while she read her own book. At first, Marcus didn't move. She could feel him go still, like a deer sensing a hiker. Her heart started to race. Her old habit, the anxious protest, wanted to scream, "Why are you so tense? It's just me." But she stayed quiet. She focused on her own breathing. She remembered that Marcus viewed closeness as a demand for his energy. By just sitting there without asking for a conversation, she was trying to provide contact comfort without the pressure. After 10 minutes, something small happened. Marcus didn't close his laptop. He didn't get up to go to his office. Instead, he shifted his weight. He didn't pull away. He actually leaned a fraction of an inch back into her. It wasn't a movie moment hug, but it was the first time in weeks he hadn't treated her touch like an electric shock. Elena realized that Marcus was like those monkeys who had been isolated too long. He didn't know how to handle the cloth mother yet. He needed to learn that her presence was a secure base, not a trap. Why biology trumps logic? You cannot logic an avoidant person into being affectionate. You can't show them a spreadsheet of how many times they've been distant and expect them to say, "You're right, I'll change now." Attachment is handled by the oldest part of the brain, the limbic system. This part of the brain doesn't care about words or arguments. It cares about safety and signals. When you chase an avoidant partner with words, you are sending a signal of threat. Your voice might be shaky, your face might look upset, and your